It's the last budget before the general election. So what do the changes announced in the past hour mean for us here in the south? With just a few weeks left before polling, today's financial measures have an even greater political significance. So with uncertainty about the recovery from recession, could the budget influence how people decide to cast their votes here in the south? Let's cross now to East Reading, a constituency which is likely to be closely fought at the election, and join our business reporter Alan Sinclair. Alan.
Hello, Joe. Yes, this has been something of a yo-yo seat in recent years. Last time around, the Conservatives regained Reading East from the Labour Party. And what we're aiming to do today is examine the implications of the budget with individuals and organisations in key battleground seats like this one. I'm in Reading East on the Suttons Industrial Estate. There are around 70 companies based here. And I think it's fair to say that although Reading has weathered the recession far better than many other towns, there are still areas of concern for businesses, among them Rockwell Collins here behind me. While the recession has meant a reduction in work from commercial airlines, the continuing conflict in Afghanistan has meant increased orders from the military for communications equipment. 350 staff work at Rockwell Collins main base in Reading, another 200 at sites in West Sussex. And overall, the company's continued to grow in the past 2 years, despite the recession. But this period's not been without its difficulties. The firm was forced to close its final salary pension scheme last February, and despite profits here in the UK, the American owners have taken a hit, which meant no staff bonuses this year. The hope is that the gradual recovery will see airlines bounce back and begin to spend again. There have been recent encouraging orders for advanced aircraft simulators like this one in Southampton. But there's also concern that both Labour and the Conservatives are planning to review defence spending as the next government grapples with the national debt. Severe cuts could have a real impact here. Joe, this is an important employer here in Reading East, and of course the Chancellor's budget speech is still going on, but later on we'll be asking the boss here to assess what today's budget means for him and his workers. We'll also be talking to small businesses and to other individuals in other key battlegrounds across the south. But for now, from Reading East, back to you.
Alan in Reading, thanks very much. It's the last big set piece before the general election and draws the battle lines for the campaign ahead. Today's budget included a stamp duty holiday for first-time house buyers, but an increase for those buying £1 million homes. £2.5 billion to help small businesses grow, and inheritance tax thresholds frozen to help pay for care for the elderly. Well, of course, with the economy such a hot political issue, our budget reaction tonight comes from three key marginals here in the south. Constituencies where MPs have majorities of hundreds, not thousands. The Chancellor announced £4 billion for operations in Afghanistan. Some of that will help companies with defence contracts. So let's start in Reading East, a Tory marginal seat and home to several high-tech industries. Our business reporter Alan Sinclair is there.
Sally, this has become something of a yo-yo seat in recent times. The Conservatives reclaimed it from Labour last time around. I'm at the UK headquarters of Rockwell Collins. It's a high-tech firm making and maintaining equipment for the aviation industry. Things like these here, these are video players for jumbo jets destined to go around the world, literally. This one's for Yemen Airways. They also supply communications equipment for the military. Now, they've weathered the recession really well here so far, but there were certainly very real concerns about the implications today's budget might have. While the recession has meant a reduction in work from commercial airlines, that's been more than offset by the continuing conflict in Afghanistan. Today's commitment to fund the military campaign is welcome news here, but it's been tempered by the lack of detail about savings the Chancellor needs to make later to halve the national debt.
I think it's important to hear what this government have got to say, but I do think that after the election there will have to be another budget. And that next budget will probably deal in more detail with some of the issues that we haven't heard about today. So I think we wait with anticipation for later in the year.
Rockwell Collins employs 350 staff in Reading, another 200 in West Sussex. The company's continued to grow despite the recession, but this period's not been without its difficulties. The firm closed its final salary pension scheme last year, and despite profits here, losses by its American arm meant no staff bonuses. Employees have been keen to hear how today's budget will affect them.
My staff have been listening to it on the radio back in my stores. So it is of interest to some.
You know, in 6 weeks' time, this could all change around. I think it's just them showing their hand and hoping they can claw something back from it.
The hope is the gradual recovery from recession will see airlines bounce back. They've been encouraging recent orders for the company's flight simulators like this one in Southampton. Predicted new aviation taxes also didn't feature. There's a sense here, though, today's budget is a smokescreen. The real picture will come into focus once we know who's pushing the buttons after the election. Sally, I think in all honesty, today's budget is being seen as something of a non-event here. There's no doubt they're waiting for the general election to come. And Labour and the Conservatives have both promised there'll be a strategic defence review in the months to come. The fear, of course, here is defence review equals cuts, and those cuts could trickle down the food chain to places like this. From Reading, back to you.
Alan, thank you very much for that. Now, the government is extending a pledge to provide work or training to any. Budget day, that's what it's been, of course, and the Chancellor has unveiled his last budget before the general election. We're just going to give you a bit of a recap on the main measures affecting the South from our business reporter, Alan Sinclair, who's live in Reading for us tonight. Alan.
Sally, here at Rockwell Collins in Reading, there's been a fairly neutral reaction to the budget, but we do have 5 broad headlines for you. First, stamp duty. That's been scrapped for first-time buyers looking for properties up to £250,000, although it is going up to 5% on more expensive properties over £1 million. Business rates are going to be cut for 1 year from October. That's gone down particularly well with the companies that we've been speaking today in Hove. There'll be help for computer games companies. Now, again, that's good news for us here in the South because we have growing computer games industries in Guildford and in Brighton. The inheritance tax threshold is being frozen for 4 years. Money is going to be channelled to help with care for the elderly. And lastly, duty on cider is up by 10%. That's not gone down well with our dozen or so cider producers in Dorset and Hampshire. Opposition reaction, David Cameron says the economy is stuck under Labour. And for the Liberal Democrats, Nick Clegg says that the Chancellor is in denial about the scale of cuts needed to address the deficit. That's about the size of it from Reading. Here tonight, Sally, back to you in the studio.
Thanks, Alan. bbc.co.uk/budget if you want to find out more about it. There's a calculator there to work with.